Welcome to episode number 35 of the Liberator Podcast, and I cannot freaking believe that we've made it 35 episodes without having you on.
It's crazy. I thought I was going to be number one, but I mean, whatever. It's fine.
You should have been number one, but the thing is I knew that you would be turning 35
next month. That's right.
And now that you have a beard, so it was the convergence of two facts. You now have a beard, so you're a full blown abolitionist. True. And sorry, James. and you're turning 35, so welcome to episode number 35. A man who probably doesn't need much of an introduction, former Senator Joseph Silk.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah.
Finally.
And then, of course, we always have James Silverman and Sam Riley. Sam with a beard. James, ladies, he's working on it.
Are you planning on getting a beard? Because, no, okay. Still no plan. All right.
It's by choice. I could if I wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
It would be a big...
That makes it worse.
That does. Now you have no excuse. But anyway, all jokes aside, the beard does look good.
Well, it's going to be here for a while.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going anywhere.
Does it have anything to do with the fact that you're no longer?
No, it has to do with I spent 3 years in the Coast Guard, and then I spent 6 years in the legislature, and I'm tired of shaving my face.
Yeah.
So, and my wife thinks it's cool, so now it's really not going anywhere.
That's really all that really matters. Like if I shave my beard, my wife is very angry with me.
I told Kimberly multiple times, like, hey, do you want me to shave it? No, she likes it, so it's going to be there. It is what it is.
Yeah, so this whole episode, we're going to be talking about beards and wives.
Do we have, like, beard balm that we're going to promo?
Oh, yeah. And we'll have, like, a discount code. It'll be in the store.
It's like a Free the States abolitionist beard balm.
That's something we should legitimately invest in.
You really should.
Yeah.
I'd probably buy some, actually.
Yeah, but that's when you know that we've possibly lost our way.
That's true. Either that or it's a really good idea.
I
agree with Sam.
I would buy some John Brown abolitionist beard balm.
Yep. I think it's a good idea.
Dude, like all the 5-point Calvinists would like love our show.
It'd be great.
Let's do it. No, okay. All beard jokes aside, yeah, we've got you here, and we could probably do 2 or 3 episodes. But to begin, for people, if they've been living under a rock in regards to the abolition movement, or they haven't been very involved and they're just now getting involved, let's just tee it off with you. Say who you are, how you got involved in the work of abolition, and everything.
Perfect. Yeah, well, I'm Joseph Silk. I spent 6 years in the Oklahoma State Legislature. My second year in, because I came into the Oklahoma State Legislature as a pro-lifer, right? My first bill was I think a Pain Capable Act or something like that. And then second year in, I met you guys. I think it was you and Josh Malone who actually came up to the office and had a 5-minute conversation. I'm like, oh yeah, pro-life bills are horribly unbiblical and unconstitutional. Abolition is the only way. And so that's when it all went off. And so we did that carried those bills for, it was Senate Bill 1118, 817, and then Senate Bill 13. So for 5 years there. And now I am no longer a state senator, thankfully.
But you didn't check out of the cause.
No, absolutely. I was going to, but I couldn't.
Yeah, the temptation's there because it's difficult.
I know, couldn't do it.
And then Brett did one of these, look into my eyes.
He did. He was like, listen to this. And that's a funny story, though. That is a funny story about I was gonna sort of check out, but couldn't do it.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where it's, you may become more powerful outside of the Senate than in the Senate because so much of the work has to be done lobbying the culture, it's true, educating the culture. And so we'll get into all that, but just for the dates on this, 2016, right? That was Senate Bill 1118.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. We were doing a big abolish abortion Oklahoma thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to remember that, but I was kind of like, man, if every senator basically takes like 5 minutes, I mean, this is going to be real easy.
Yeah. Well, I had the same thought because I talked to, so again, second year in the state Senate, have a conversation with you guys. I'm like, oh, this makes perfect sense. I'm just going to go tell the other senators.
Yeah. Hey, guys, did you know that we have the governmental authority to protect preborn children with law?
Hey, guys, did you know that everything we've been doing is wrong? Let's get rid of that and do it the right way.
Yeah.
It didn't pan out that way.
Yeah, the depravity of man and pride and all that kind of stuff, plus whatever the pro-lifers were doing. But it was very quick for you.
It was, about 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how they responded to that. I think there's probably some good content in there about how your various colleagues in the Senate responded to you becoming an abolitionist.
Yeah, so the first one, so basically I had, at that time, it was the heartbeat bill, which which was a big deal and is still a big deal to a lot of people if they don't know.
But that was radical at that point.
It was radical,
Like
and they were like, "Gosh, who's this Silk guy running the heartbeat bill?" And I passed it through committee. So we had the heartbeat bill, which was Senate Bill 1118, passed through committee quickly, and then between that and when I tried to get it on the floor was when I met you guys and talked to you guys, and I was like, "Well, this is just divine timing because I'm going to take 1118." And just substitute abolition language, right? So when it hits the floor. So I called Senator Mike Schultz, who is the floor leader, on Friday, and I said, hey, I know 1118 is on the agenda to be heard on Monday morning. And I was like, I just want to let you know I changed some language. And he was like, that's fine. No big deal. We're gonna hear it first thing because, to keep down on the emails and stuff. And I'm like, great. So to answer your question, I was like, sweet, this is going great. And then I roll in on Monday morning, and I remember driving to the Capitol on Monday morning. I was like, me and my wife were talking. I was like, can't believe this is second year in, we're actually gonna go up there and end abortion, right? And she was like, this is awesome. So we get to the Capitol. So I roll in thinking that was super great. I got to educate everybody on this. And so he keeps not putting the bill on deck or whatever. Yeah. And so I go up to him like, hey, are we still gonna? We're on the floor, and I go up to Senator Schultz and I'm like, hey, are we still going to hear Senate Bill 1118? And he turned around, man, his face was like beet red mad. He was so angry, and I was very naive and like, I don't even know what you're mad about. And he turned around, he was like, you have no idea what you have stirred up. And I was like, well, I told you that I changed the language, and then so
you didn't tell me it was going to be good.
So from that point on,
make it evil in some other way.
It was not a good reaction with the other senators. So Senator Dan Newberry from Tulsa, who was a homeschool dad, one of the more conservative guys. I went up to him at one point and I was like, "Hey, can you get behind this bill?" And he was just like, "You realize your bill removes I can't remember what it was. It was some big pro-life bill that he championed years ago." He's like, you realize it repeals that? That was like my legacy almost. And I'm like,
it's funny. It wasn't even explicitly written in there.
No, and I was like, but we don't need, and I just told him, I was like, we don't need that. We can't have that anymore if we're going to abolish it. He's like, I can't get behind it. And he just walks off. So that was one other reaction. Then another one was Senator Jason Smalley, actually. We're sitting there and I'm just like, hey, Jason, you believe life begins at the moment? Because by this point, I'm just like, wait, everybody's pushing back on this. So I'm sitting there with Jason Smalley, and I'm like, hey, Jason, you believe life begins at the moment of fertilization, right? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, and the intentional taking of that is like murder, right? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, and you're still not going to get behind this abolition bill? He's like, no. And so, I mean, it was a lot of stories like that, but basically universal pushback from the get-go.
Because at the time, I believe that was either the first or the second bill ever, right? The first or second abolition bill ever introduced?
First one, yeah.
First one.
First one. Now, for someone's going to be watching this and be like, oh, whatever, there was something somewhere. Is the first one that is like this explicit abortion is murder should be prohibited entirely.
You got all 5 components of an abolition bill.
Well, it didn't even have all 5 components. It was it was just abortion is murder. It should be treated like murder. Abortion is the intentional blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So it did that main crux thing. But what it was actually the language of an initiative petition that the ACLU was not allowing us to circulate.
Yep.
And there's something kind of wrong about that route anyway, but the legislators weren't doing anything. We were like, no legislator's going to do it.
Right.
And then you were like, I'll do it. And we're like, oh, well, this is the proper way.
Right.
But it didn't have, I mean, it wasn't what Senate Bill 13
No,
became.
it was much shorter than
it fit on like a page.
It was before we had Bradley, right? So it was just a more,
Yeah.
not as much legalese and all the technicalities and stuff.
Yeah. But it was pure abortion is murder. Yeah. But I think for the sake of what we're saying here is you had if there's a heartbeat, then we will protect them. And that's sort of acceptable in pro-life circles more now than it was then. But whenever you change, if we have the vote to pass a heartbeat bill, we have the vote to criminalize abortion. Then everybody was like,
right. Well, but even when I did that, so Senator Rob Standridge, right, who was the chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee at that time from here in Norman. And Rob is a super conservative guy on a lot of things, and we get along fine. But he came, so once all that initial pushback started, like, we're not doing this, he came into my office and he was like, because I asked him, I was like, hey, you were the chairman. Can you just tell Senator Schultz that it's this floor substitute is okay? Legit. Because it was in my prerogative to do. I could do it, but it's always good if the chairman of the committee is like, yeah, that's fine. And he was like, I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, why not? And he was in my office, and I remember he was almost yelling at me. He's like, put it back to the heartbeat bill that went through committee. I'm just like, but that one doesn't actually call it murder, and it doesn't save all the babies. And his response was, Joseph, just save one baby, and that'll be good enough. And I'm just like, that's not good enough, because it actually does more harm than good.
Yeah.
And so, it was another...
I don't know if it's the same meeting, but there was one meeting where I was like, unknown. I'm sure that maybe someone would go like, is that guy that yells at us on Facebook? But they didn't know who I was very much. And I was sitting on your little couch, and Rob came in with like stuff he printed out from the internet or something to try to. It
may have been the same meeting. Yeah.
Try to convince. And it was just one of those like, man, this
stuff
is
he printed out about abolitionist movement, about how we were these crazy evil people.
It was like these people are heretics and stuff. I can't remember. He had found he'd kind of put together some ammunition or something.
Right.
And
some kind of collection of pulpit and pen articles or something.
Yes.
Well,
exactly.
and then that week it was funny because there was a lot of like the AHA people there that week.
Because in 2016 it was the same time a conference was going on.
Yeah. And so they came. People. Of course, I thought it was cool. I was like, man, these are kind of radical people, right?
These people are rich.
But I talked to Mike Schultz.
20-page pamphlets.
I talked to Mike Schultz later that week, and he was like, "Do you realize that they're calling my pastor?" And I'm like, why is that a bad thing? I mean, your pastor needs to try to tell you what to do right?
Yeah.
And then when we were leaving on Thursday, I left pretty. So we were up there Monday and then Thursday, and that was kind of a crazy week. And I left pretty. I was like, man, that didn't go over the way that I had hoped. And we had stopped at Chick-fil-A in Midwest City, in there eating lunch with my wife and kids, and I was kind of like, well, that's a bummer. And Senator Josh Burkeen, who's a great guy, and he's going to be an abolitionist very soon.
But he was a would-be. At that time, you thought,
he would be. And he wasn't pushing back on the bill. He never did. He would have voted for it, and he still would if he was still there. But he called me, and he was like, hey, no, it was kind of a weird week for you. Just be careful with those people, Joseph. And I remember it made me so mad because I'm like, be careful with the people who say stop killing babies. Like, Josh, what are you talking about? But there was so many stories about the different types of pushback, and so it was.
So you think a lot was going on behind the scenes? Like,
oh yeah,
so they were all just kind of talking to each other. It's like, we are all against this, right?
Right. So what they did, no, they were all. It was all behind the scenes because what happened was I did the committee sub. They were sort of trusting me at the time when I said I did a language change, which I did, and I told them I did, but they thought it was just another political
and still playing within their game.
Still playing within their game, and then they're like, "Whoa, this!" Is, and so as soon they did, I don't think they even read the language. Well, then when they did, then they started having all their backdoor meetings and been like, "Hey, this guy is crazy, and these people are a danger to the republic," and all. And so that's when they started having their little backdoor meeting, making sure that all of the senators except for me thought abolition was a horrible thing.
So I think there's like a few claims that people do not believe when abolitionists make them. One of them is that pro-lifers are the ones who are keeping abortion legal in conservative states. And when they hear this kind of thing, they're, it just kind of rattles them. It's like, how can that possibly be? These are the guys I've supported financially. These are the guys I voted for. I voted for them for the purpose of abolishing abortion, and they're not doing it. What do you think the motivation is with these guys for keeping it? Like, for not going the abolition route.
Yeah, because I agree with you. When I talk to people, I mean, I get the same response. They're like, "No, I know my local representative, so and so. He would be totally for this." And most of the time, I'm just like, he's probably not. 99.9% of the time, they're probably not for it. I think the motivation is the vast majority of legislators want to climb the political ladder, whether that be get up into leadership or leave the Senate and go be like a corporation commissioner or maybe lieutenant governor. Yeah. They want to do that. So in order to do that, like all politicians, they don't want to make any enemies. They want to ride the line and they don't want to take a hard stance on anything. And that's all of them. That's the Democrats, Republicans. So that's the main motivation, is they want to be, they have future ambitions, but also they don't want to be looked at as a radical. I mean, that just terrifies them, right? And I'm just like, man, if saying let's not kill babies is radical, I mean, call me radical. I mean, it's just crazy. So it's those two things. It's they just kind of want to, and coupled with that future ambitions, they just want to be reelected as easily as possible. Like real. I mean, and I say that people are like, no, yes, for real. They don't want to make enemies in this area or this area or this area. Because a lot of state representative, state senate races come down to a few hundred votes, and they know that, which is kind of scary for them, because as the abolition movement is growing, they're now going to start losing elections.
I was about to say, this is an unfortunate reality of politics, but it's also, because it's true, eventually, like in Oklahoma, we kind of saw with the Warren Hamilton, but I think we'll see even more explicitly as more and more people become abolitionists, you won't be able to get elected if you are, like when you say I'm a pro-lifer, people are going to go, it makes me kind of not want to vote for you.
Right. So you're okay with killing babies under certain circumstances? And then when they say yes in rural Oklahoma, they're going to be like, well, I'm not voting for you then.
Yeah. So you're going to be up there, and if you get any kind of position of power and a bill to abolish abortion comes up, you're going to be like, no, because that's what people are. And it's not like we're making it up or we're creating some narrative that isn't real. We're just pointing out the narrative that is there, and it was there from the very beginning. But it wasn't there for you. So this was your second year up there, and you saw it, you understood abortion's murder, it should be criminalized. But what would you say, if you can, I mean, you can't put a mathematical percentage on this, but how many of them are as reachable as you were, generally speaking, in the legislature?
Or are reachable at all?
Right.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that is, so you're going to have a couple different groups of legislators. So I'm going to say a good 85% of state senators and state representatives can be pushed to vote for an abolition bill, and that's what's great about it, is if they have vocal constituents that are saying we're a voter in your district, you better do this, they're going to do it because they just cave to the will of the people, right? So that's good. Now, on the negative side, I'm going to say right now, I only know of one that would actually author an abolition bill and take the hits. So they're not going to do it on their own. And I don't think you'll ever have a majority of abolitionists in. When I say abolitionists, like they're going to go up there, they're going to author the bill, and they're going to push the bill and lobby for the bill, like, do their job, right? Hardly ever. But if you have the people push them to do it, there's so many spineless people up there, they will vote for it. So you really, like, because people ask me all the time, they're like, man, we just need a majority of abolitionists. I was like, no, you don't. You just need one. You just need one to carry the bill. And then you've got to have the people, the voters, to push them. So that's where the focus needs to be.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I think sometimes, people don't understand why we spend, as lobbyists, we're not up at the Capitol, bringing coffee to people and saying, how can I help you? And like going out and whining and dining the legislators. It's more like turning the people into an activated group against the legislators, in the sense of pushing them.
You spend more time drawing pictures of them standing on aborted babies than giving them any gifts.
Yes, definitely 100% more time doing that sort of thing. Well, and I think it also helps people understand, like, they don't spend a lot of time arguing against like the language of the bills or straight up the ideas. There's a lot of time invested just, these people are bad, we don't like them.
Right.
Because if they can keep the populace from thinking well about abolitionist groups and stuff, I think they can protect the system, what's going on. So that's what they do, but that's what we're seeing is starting to fail.
Yeah, right. And I think that's a really important point too. That could kind of be another jumping off point for you. What sorts of tactics did they use up at the Capitol? You talked a little bit about backroom meetings, but like what kinds of things would be said in those meetings, or what other sorts of ways did they turn the people or turn the other senators against you or against the abolitionists in Oklahoma What kinds of things would they do?
Man, I mean, there's just tons of them. So, and I'm sure we'll get into, and you guys have published very well, the excuses against abolition. So that, leadership would just say, listen, this abolition bill that Silk's pushing, it's a secessionist bill. Yeah. Even though, like, Hamilton's recent bill literally said it's not, right? They will still say, just tell your constituents it's a secessionist bill.
And they try to find lines that work.
Right. Like, so Senator Casey Murdoch, one time somebody came up to him and said, we need you to support, because he was a co-author on Senate Bill 13, then he removed himself. And he was like, I didn't realize that was a secessionist bill.
Yeah.
And this abolitionist up there was like, it's not. Can you, they said, here's the bill. Can you show me where it says that this is a secessionist bill? And he's like, well, I don't want to get into it.
Is this something they believe? Or something they just say?
No, it's something they just say.
Because they never really believe it. They know, they're like, this line works to justify me not voting for it.
Exactly. And it works on their voters. So for example, so what happens is, so leadership will say, okay, here's an abolition bill. We don't want to do this for multiple reasons. Like, I don't know. There's a host of reasons they don't want to do it. But they'll say, so we're going to give you talking points or bullet points to say why it's bad. So they'll distribute these bullet points that'll say, okay, Senate bill or an abolition bill calls for secession. An abolition bill will basically make every mother who's ever had an abortion be executed.
Yeah.
All of these things. It also makes, if you have a pregnancy that's dangerous, the mom has to die. It calls for mothers to die, right? Yeah. So they'll give those things to senators and say, go tell your constituents this. So then when you have these constituents or these voters who are for abolition, but they're not 100% educated on it, when they get approached by their voter, right, and be like, hey, we want you to vote for Senate Bill 13 or whatever, 495, they'll be like, oh, I can't do that because it says this. And you're 99% of the time, the voter's like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And sometimes
that's it.
They won't buy it, but they don't know how to respond to it.
Exactly.
But I think that it has been happening where people are responding well.
Right.
That's when they're like, man, I'm really ticked at whoever.
Oh, they get really
got you to see through my bulllarchy.
They get really mad. So that has been happening, especially over the past couple years. People are becoming more educated. So things like the secession excuse, but like, can you show me in the bill where it says it? So now you look really bad as an elected official when you say, either I don't want to talk to you about it. Okay, that looks bad, or I haven't read the bill. Okay, that looks bad, right? Especially on an issue like this.
Found that so many times.
So those conversations are because people are becoming much more educated on it, and most legislators are really not intellectual people. They're actually pretty stupid people. They just are. Like when it comes to being able to grasp like logic and stuff like that, they just don't. And I know people are always like, "Man, you're always hating on legislators." And I'm like, well, I served with them for 6 years. So.
Yeah, it's not like you don't know. You have.
Yeah, I promise. I've been in conversations with them, and anyway.
But the sad thing is that it works. Like it's working less, but I hate it because I'll go into an office with somebody else, and when the legislator says the reason I'm not voting for this bill is because, and they're using one of those lines,
right?
It's a secessionist bill. And to watch the person kind of go, just take that. And it's just like, okay, that makes us want to do our job more.
Right.
Give them the answers and get them willing to get over the hump of being so afraid of the senator.
Well,
or the representative.
And there's another problem. Well, it's not a problem. It's kind of unique to the abolition movement when it comes to legislators and the involvement, is you have a lot of abolitionists, myself including, that we don't flatter politicians, right?
Yeah.
We're like, hey, babies are dying. So 15 babies are going to die today. You better do something about it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what the pro-life movement's done forever.
Oh, yeah. And they will unashamedly say this is the way to be successful.
And it's absolutely not. Like, flattering politicians is the way to spend 50 years and not have accomplished anything.
But it might make you feel good.
Right.
Because I've talked to politicians, and I'm like, I think this guy doesn't like me because I'm not flattering him.
Right. You're right.
So he's going to try to find somebody who's an abolitionist who will flatter him and will go by these rules, so we don't have to listen to Free the States.
And then they're never going to pass an abolition bill.
Yeah.
Like that's just like so they will accept you and be like, oh, you're an abolitionist that's going to talk me up and flatter me and make me think I'm amazing. Yeah, I'll be your friend, and we'll maybe run an abolition bill every year or whatever. they're never going to pass it. And,
Yeah,
and so that was, I mean, I say that because that was, these legislators kind of get their feelings hurt when you tell them, you're not doing your job, we expect you to do it. But that's exactly what basically the tone has got to remain.
Yeah. Well, it seems, I can see why people would be sort of drawn in by that, because it's sort of, you're having these short-term gains where you're having these legislators sort of listen to you, but then you have long-term failure because they're just so weak that they're not going to be able to push back against the major sort of resistance that they're going to get by running an abolition bill. So, I think that with our approach, it's actually sacrificing a lot of sometimes a close relationship with them in order for them to understand that there is actual gigantic drawbacks to them not going the way of abolition.
Yeah, and
so
I
it
think
toughens them up a lot more.
You're right. And I think if you approach a legislature like you're going to be flattering about this issue, one, it tells me that you don't know a whole lot about legislators, because if you approach with flattery and they're like, yeah, we'll build a relationship or whatever, and we'll run that bill. A lot of people do not understand. And I've told this story a lot, and some people don't believe me, but I'm just like, well, what do I have to gain of fabricating stories like this, right? Anyway, but I've seen in 6 years, dozens of times, I will have seen politicians, right? Their constituent requests a bill. And so they'll author the bill, and then they will go to the chairman and say, hey, I've been in, like, I promise you, I've been in these meetings, and they'll be like, hey, I authored Senate Bill such and such. I don't really want anything to do with it. It was for a constituent. Don't hear it.
Yeah.
And so the chairman's like, okay, got your back, right? Because they're running cover.
Yeah.
And we cannot, let's not be that naive as an abolitionist movement, right?
Yeah.
Where I'm not going to go tell constituents, go tell your legislator to author a bill, and then he authors it, and they're like, well, that's all we could do. No. You're going to have to stay on them and harp on them, be like, who else can I talk to? What can I do to help you? Because they'll do that. I mean, these legislators will do that if you're going to use the flattering manner.
So I think it's very important that people know that this is the way they're operating. Because I mean, that yes, a legislator literally will look for ways of making the constituent happy and then also making leadership happy and go have this behind the scenes thing.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's not surprising to us and the people who've been in this, but yeah, when you leave a meeting with a senator or a rep and you're like, man, I think that went well.
There's a problem.
Chances are they pull the fast one on you, and you just don't realize how shifty they are.
Yeah.
And
their entire goal is to make you feel that way without having to commit to actually doing very much, but make you feel like you've been heard. That is what they're, I assume,
No, you're exactly right. And I've seen it firsthand, and people are like, no, my local rep, I know I was a Sunday school teacher, and I'm just like, so I say that because we had an abolition conference one time, right? And I gave this speech about basically how the legislature, nobody was getting behind the abolition bill. And this little old lady came up to me right afterwards during questions. She was like, now, is my senator one of those that wouldn't get behind it? And in my head, I'm just like, probably, because nobody is, right? And I'm just like, well, who was your senator? And she goes, well, I was a Sunday school teacher, and it's Gregory. And she was like, Greg McCourtney, and I'm just like, oh man, like, she was like, because he should be behind it, and I'm just like, yeah, he should be, but no, but anyway, but yeah, you're right. Like a lot of people, they just don't think that these legislators will actually be that way, but they are.
Yeah,
that's just all there is to
and
it.
it's not cynicism. It's the truth of the matter. I mean, there was this last conference and this last lobby day, abolition day. A good brother was coming out of a meeting with a House rep and was like, man, he's going to do it. Yeah. And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, he's like, yeah, man. I mean, he calls himself pro-life. And I'm like, I bet you that guy's not going to do it at all. But it was a really positive, man, this guy was good. I think all we have to do is get him the language. But then we got in there and actually talked about it and put our finger on the hard parts, the important parts, the nullification, the ignoring Roe, the criminalization. And this guy's basically arguing that you got to keep abortion legal just in case there's like a baby that's got a abnormality that they need to be killed in the. It's just like, wait a second. previous person thought this person was an abolitionist.
Right.
They just didn't ask the right questions. And so we have to be forthwith
Right.
and take them and not fall for any of their tricks.
Well, and people, I mean, and again, people are always like, that can't be true. I'm like, call your legislator, set up a meeting with him. I'll give you some questions to ask, and we'll see who was correct. And a good example of this about this whole flattery verse being very stern, right, is the teacher union, right? So in 2018 or 2017, I guess, was the big teacher walkout, right? And those teachers were ruthless. They were ruthless. And so public education funding, right? That's a whole nother conversation. But they knew what they wanted, right? There was no way that anybody thought a Republican-controlled state legislature was going to increase taxes, right?
Yeah.
To get more funding in education. Like, everybody was like, well, we'll probably like cut government in other areas to get them that funding. No. And these teachers, dude, when I would go, like, me and some senator would go to do our car for lunch, they were like heckling us, and they were like writing stuff on our vehicles, and I mean, it was ruthless. Well, guess what happened within 2 weeks after you got 20,000 people there that knew exactly what they wanted?
Tax increase, teachers.
Yeah, $500 million tax increase. The Republicans just totally caved, and I'm like, hey, there's a good example of how really the legislature needs to be treated on these kind of things.
Yeah,
But,
they probably read Frederick Douglass, right? There.
Yeah.
Power concedes nothing without a demand. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Probably
but
so.
and it's over and over the thing that we're always criticized for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because they don't want to have their feelings hurt. Because they have this status, right? And if you ever even come close to talking down to them or even on their level, right, that's a big no-no. And it's just silly that it's like that. It's absolutely silly.
Well, they definitely hate you. I went to Greg McCourtney's house,
Yeah.
and I talked to him, and he said that if you had come up to his house, he would have punched you. I was
Yeah.
like, wow.
Yeah.
From a state senator, that's interesting.
And by the way, we were flying. It's not like we just went to his house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We were
Going
They
door
were
to
just
door.
giving him a flyer.
Yeah. That he, but
we were
people got
making
to
sure
understand
that
it.
he knew to vote for Carissa Robertson. That's what we were doing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they do not like what I did, and they're really not going to like what I'm about to do. So, yeah.
Well, it's
just part
insane
of
though.
it, right?
You gotta lay it out clearly. You think that the governing authorities of Oklahoma should extend the laws protecting people to unborn people, and they hate you for that.
Right. I just say, uphold the Constitution. And they're like, gosh, we hate you so much.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Well,
really?
that and the
it?
continually embarrassing them for their incremental bills. I just love watching those hearings where, what was it, Bullard? Bullard was just, oh man, that was brutal. His whole thing was just crumbling.
They don't like that. Well, and what was funny actually is so I was talking to Senator Hamilton not too long ago, and I was like, so have you talked to Senator Treat? You know, this was prior to session. He's like, yeah. He was like, we've talked, and he's like, we haven't gotten into it, but Senator Treat said, I know we're probably going to have some hard conversations. I would just prefer we have those behind closed doors in private. And I'm just like, well, don't do it. Be sure to do it on the floor so everybody knows exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
If Greg Treat requests something from you,
then don't
do the
it.
opposite.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And I know, Hamilton's his first year in there, so they're going to, he's got to learn that. But
Right.
there's a reason they want to do things that way.
Yep.
And
That's
they want you to
exactly
play
right.
ball. And if you don't play ball, it costs you something.
It does. I don't know anything about that.
You got any examples of that?
No, yeah. I actually just told the story because somebody, it was at the Free Will Baptist Abolition Conference. They were like, why is it like this? Why? And I'm like, well, you have to understand there's these politics inside of the state Senate, right? So you have like the campaigns and the voting and stuff like that in your district, but you also have politics inside. And so, we elect the pro tem, right? But it's horrible. So they go around and get their votes, and they're like, all right, so I'm running for pro tem. I've got, I don't know, 15 votes, so we're going to get it. So if you vote for me, I'll give you this chairmanship. And that's just constant, right? And if you misbehave, they'll pull your chairmanships. Now, I don't really understand because, like, I tell people all the time, there's really not, being a state senator or state representative really isn't that big of a deal. Like, it's not. Like, yeah, a lot of people voted. Like, it's an honor because so many people trusted you to do it. But as far as like having power and stuff, it's not really. But for some reason, people like they hold their chairmanship positions like as the greatest thing that's ever happened to them, right? And so that's why if the pro tem says, "Hey, you're not going to hear that bill in your committee," they'll be like, "Yes, sir, I will not hear that bill," right? So for example, in 2019, I guess, Senate Bill 13, Senator Greg Treat violated state law, took the majority of the Health and Human Services Committee and had a meeting.
Everyone but you and
everyone but me and
one other guy.
There was a couple of. They had a quorum. They didn't they violated the Open Meetings Act, which in the Senate rules, right, we are subject to. So the entire committee actually committed a misdemeanor by doing this.
And they get away with it.
I actually talked to a lawyer, and he was like, if you want to push that, just know that that's a misdemeanor. It's going to be a big deal. And I'm just like, well, maybe it should be. But anyway, so I wrote Greg a letter, Senator Treat a letter, and I also wrote one to the Lieutenant Governor. And I said, hey, on this day, at this time, you had these people. You had a meeting about this. It violated this Senate rule, blah, blah, blah. It violated this law, blah, blah, blah. Is this how we're going to operate in the state Senate? I gave him that letter. Showed up the next morning. My vice chairmanship of Business and Commerce sticker had been taken off my wall, right? And then
aggressively, so that like some of it was still left.
Yeah. So and then they left a letter on my desk, and all it said was, "Senator Silk, as you know, as pro tem, I choose who the chairman and the vice chairmans are. I'm removing you as vice chairman from Business and Commerce Committee." I'm just like,
petty.
And I'm like, here's the thing. Do I really care? I'm like, great. Now I don't have to really watch that agenda so close. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't understand. But that was like a big deal. Like if your chairmanship or vice chairmanship's removed for not basically cowering and doing exactly what they say. But it's a big deal to a lot of people. And I haven't figured out why.
And it does work. And that's what
it does. No,
sad.
It works for most people. So anyway.
Yeah.
But they will punish you for sure.
Yeah. And you know, the thing whenever you're bringing it up as like this thing happened, it's illegal. Well, they kind of look at it and be like, we do that all the time.
Right.
It's a constant thing.
Right. Well, they're like when they vote on a pro-life bill, that's unconstitutional. Like they break the law all the time.
Yeah.
And they really don't care.
Yeah. I remember earlier this year was Senate Bill 495, Hamilton's Abolition Act. You look at it, it comes to a vote, and it's 10-0. There's no debate. I mean, there was debate from the Democrats, but none of the Republican conservative pro-lifers explained why they were voting no.
Right.
I just think before the committee meeting even happened, it was all, are we all voting no? We're all voting no.
Right. Oh, no, that was completely set up. So going back to those inner political workings, when they put Senate Bill 495 on the agenda, that first meeting, I was like, that is a trap. So what they're trying to do is they're going to try to take the wind out of sails, right? And I talked to Senator Hamilton, and I was like, that bill is going to go down 10 or 11-0. And he was like, I think you're right. And I'm just like, yeah, it is. I was like, you as a state senator do not have to hear that bill. I was like, you lay that bill over, and even if it's next year, that's fine. We got a live bill that we can work on. We can push these people to get
campaign for it for the whole year.
Exactly. And so, but it unfortunately turned out wrong. But you're right. They had a previous meeting. They were like, let's just kill this and be done with it. So they knew exactly what they were doing. I mean, in the Senate especially, now the House of Representatives, their committees are much more, they deliberate on things. I mean, they do. The Senate, you know exactly what's going to happen with every bill before it hits the committee. The only reason they have a committee is because they have to, because of open meetings, right? You know almost exactly what's going to, it all happens behind doors. So you're exactly right. They knew what they were doing on that.
Yeah, and for people who are agreeing to the whole deal, they might think we're being conspiracy theorists or something like that. And I feel like we always have to explain, no, we know what's going on. And I remember we have Abolition Day like a week or so later. And there's about to be, 1,000+ people coming and saying Senate Bill 495. It's not surprising to me that they're trying to hear it and kill it a week before that.
Right.
And so it's so clear and blatant, the conniving that they've done. Yeah. And I think that as we learn this, we need to be shrewd as serpents and not play their game.
Right.
And it may be a little controversial, but it was it was hard because I was an advocate of, not doing it,
Right.
And as you were, you mentioned a second ago, it's like actually Greg McCourtney, they've come up with this way of killing this bill, keeping abolition off of the Senate docket for 2 years for an entire session. And when they start to do stuff like that, I think we've learned enough and we're like, okay, they want us to play this game. Tell them no.
Right.
Say, I'm not letting you kill this bill, and table it.
Yep.
And then that way, you keep it around to campaign for it and so on and so forth. But they have, I always thought, man, they've got a number of things they can do, but it's only a matter of time. But letting the bill be voted on was never one of them that I expected.
No, and I mean,
but it wasn't a good thing.
No, and to say that, whenever I talked to Senator Hamilton, I was like, lay that bill over, keep that bill alive because you're walking into a trap. He said, let me talk to Senator McCourtney about it. And I mean, I was like, you don't have to talk. He can't make you hear that bill. Well, they went and asked Senator McCourtney, and he said, hey, I'm thinking about laying that bill, Senate Bill 495 over. Do you know what Senator McCourtney's response was?
You're not allowed to?
No, I think we want to go ahead and hear it. And I'm just like, really? So a complete anti-abolitionist, like loves killing babies chairman wants to hear an abolition bill. What do you think's going to happen?
Ding.
Like,
He's
let's think
killing
about that,
that.
y'all. Yeah,
That's when you go, okay, we'll do the opposite. And so it's one of those weird paradox things. Like sometimes the hardest thing to do would be to table your own bill. And so I was already thinking, we're going to have to protect this move. We're going to have to say, no. He's tabling it to protect it.
Right. To keep it alive.
Keep it alive. And so, and people are, okay, why are you getting into all this inside baseball? Because it's not just a simple write a bill, people from good principles pass it or not. There's a bunch of hijinks and flattery and behind the scenes deals that are going on. And now that you were there for 3 terms,
one and a half. Senate's 4 years, remember? So,
but
you 2 years. Yeah.
You were like, and you could have gone back another one. But like now that you're out, you can say, I'm just going to open this all up.
Right.
Let people know what's going on behind the scenes. Yep. And hopefully that knowledge that you gained can then be sort of, properly weaponized to where people can now be trained, go in.
Exactly.
And no longer fall for as many of these schemes.
And that I mean that's the goal is to and even if people are skeptical about how bad it is up there, all this stuff we've talked about, it doesn't take. I mean, just watch a little bit. Just watch really, just kind of from the sidelines, see what's going on, and make a few phone calls, and everything that we're saying, they're going to be like, okay, yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah,
because it is,
and they hate that we're saying it.
They do. They don't like that because again, they got so angry at me one time because I was what did Greg Treat say? Oh, he said he was chastising me because I was questioning the integrity of the Senate, and I was like, yeah, the Senate's not upholding the Constitution, so I absolutely am. And that was kind of right around the same time that he removed my vice chairmanship, questioning the integrity of the Senate. I'm like, yes, I absolutely do question the integrity of the state Senate. Yeah, it's not existent.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a controversial accusation.
But it was. That was a big deal. And I'm just like, man, I don't know what world they live in.
Mm-hmm. But this does lead into what you're doing now.
Yeah.
And I praise God for it. I know that it can be wearisome dealing with this, and probably it's a lot more fun to go hunting.
It is.
I know you like to hunt.
Still a lot more fun to go hunting.
I can't remember. I don't know if it was like your wife or your sister or one of your sisters or something. Yeah. They're like, I think Joseph just wants to go sit in a deer blind, and I'm like, I understand.
Yeah, that's probably true. No,
can you tell him he's not allowed? Is there any way that you can pass the message on? Yep. He's not allowed. And so you're not just sitting in a deer blind. I mean, you might do that from time to time.
Yeah.
But so the project now.
Yeah. So a little backstory on the project. So I got out, and back in December, so last December, Brett Baggett had a little abolition conference, which you guys went over to in December, and he had me come up and talk about how to engage your legislators. So on the way up there, so I got out of the Senate, right, and I'm entering the construction, the real normal work phase, right, and so on the way up there, I have a conversation with my wife. I'm like, Kimberly, I was like, I think this is probably going to be the last public abolition deal that I do, like intentionally. I was like, I'll go if I'm requested, but I'm just going to switch over and back into the private sector, right? That's our conversation on the way up there. She was like, really? And her comment was, you may want to think about continuing what you've been doing for the past 6 years. Yeah. That was her sweet, kind way. So then I'm sitting there the first
Praise
night.
God for Kimberly.
Exactly.
It's always a faithful
I'm
wife.
sitting there, and Brett Baggett's preaching this sermon, out of Proverbs, I think, and he's like, we're commanded to rescue those. And I'm just like, gosh. And then Dusty Devers gets up, and he does one out of Psalms. And I'm just sitting there like, this is ridiculous. And so
who knew this whole conference was designed to keep you
we get
in the battle?
car. We get in the car, and Kimberly looks over. She's like, well, did you hear Brett and Dusty's sermons? I'm just like, you gotta be kidding. So anyway, so that was the goal. So, and it's something that I have been thinking about over the past several years, right? Is really kind of what we talked about earlier about getting voters involved with their specific legislators. And so, yeah, what I've done is we're in the beginning phases of launching a nonprofit, which is Liberty Rising. The website's out there. A lot of people have talked about it. Liberty Rising Institute. And the goal of it is threefold. It is to educate, equip, and then help engage the legislature. So basically, and we're going to be specifically targeting churches, but we'll go anywhere. Bible studies, homeschool groups, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go there. We're going to tell people, we're going to educate them on abolition. So this is what abolition is. This is why pro-life is bad and has to go away, right? Mm-hmm. But then, so if you go to a church of 200, you may have 8 that are going to be like, okay, we want to know more. Okay, so you take that 8, and that's your core team out of your church or your group, and I'm going to equip that team with how to engage their specific state senator and state representative and build a relationship with them. And so what I've told people, I've said, if your state senator does not know you by name, you have not done enough to end abortion. Okay, and so that's the goal of Liberty Rising is to get people to build relationships with their senator and their representative and start pushing. And it's not just it's not just to make a phone call. It is a long. It's in session. It's out of session.
Sustained pressure.
It's sustained pressure to know, because I've seen how these politicians react, and every legislator has that constituent, not with abolition, but with other things.
Yeah,
and they know that if this transportation bill comes up, they know
I'm getting an email and a phone call from Bob so-and-so.
This guy's going to rake me over the coals in this town if I don't go with this, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we've got to do with abolition, right? And there's abolitionists all over the state, mainly in part because of a lot of what you guys have done. But some of those abolitionists still don't know, well, how do I get a hold of my senator? What do I need to do to be impactful? Mm-hmm. And so the goal of Liberty Rising is I'm going to be like, let me help you do exactly what they don't want you to do. Mm-hmm. Basically is what it is, right?
We the people.
And it's not just give them information and be like, see ya. No, it's give them information. And then if you don't know who your senator is, I'm going to tell you who he is. And I'm going to give you some backstory on him. And I'm going to give you his contact information. Then I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do to set up that meeting, what to watch out for to not get discouraged for. I'm going to tell you exactly how that meeting is going to go. And then if you want to meet up 30 minutes before that meeting, let's meet up and I'll go over it again. Or if you want me to go to the meeting with you, I'll go with you. So it's all about, really getting voters. And it's nothing new. I mean, this is what the NRA and the OK2A. Yeah. I mean, it's just Grassroots 101, right? But we're doing it specifically with abolition. So that's kind of a snapshot of what Liberty Rising Institute's going to do.
Yeah. So you think they just liked you before?
Yeah. So this is exactly, and I tell people this is exactly what they didn't want to happen with the abolition movement. They're like, oh, they're so annoying. These Free the States guys are all over us. And they're like, well, at least they didn't pull an OK2A and are giving, this is your constituent, this is your voter. And they're like, maybe Justice Ilk will go away, right? It's not. It didn't happen. So, this is exactly what they don't want to happen.
Mm-hmm. So someone has a church or they have a homeschool group or whatever it be. How do they get you to come to their to their event?
Yeah. So again, we're brand new, and so a lot of people are asking that question. So the answer is you go to our website, which is liberty-rising.org. and you can fill it up. Or shoot me an email, or you can call me. My phone number should be on there as well. You give me a date and a time, and we'll be there. So we'll create a social media event to share. So literally, you just give a date and a time. We're going to bring the material. We're going to create a social media event to share. And it doesn't have to be, I've told people, if there's 10 people there, I'll be there.
Yep.
Like, we're not looking for crowds of 200-300 people, because really, if you talk to, like I said earlier, if you talk to 200 people, really, it's probably only going to be a small majority who are actually going to build that relationship with their legislator. So, So go to our website, email me, date and time. If it's a homeschool group, if it's just a group of friends in a neighborhood, if it's a church, wherever it is, and we. Like some examples, like we can do, on a weekday morning over coffee with 5 of your buddies. We can do a whole Sunday morning thing, right? If your pastor's down with it, we can address the entire conversation. You can do a joint Sunday school group, Sunday school, right, prior to sermon. We had one church that did like an after potluck sermon, right? So did church, had potluck, then we all went back in. That's when we did the thing. You can do that. It can be anytime. Wednesday night Bible study. It can be a Sunday or Saturday afternoon mini conference, any time. And that people want to know about the time too. Like, how long is this? I'm like, I'm going to tell you everything that I kind of need to tell you in about 25, 30 minutes. Then we can open it up for 30 minutes of good discussion, question and answer. So about an hour.
Yeah.
And now that's the initial meeting. Now, once you have that initial meeting, then you're going to find out who is like, yes, I want to be the guy who my senator knows by name. I want to be, and you're going to build this little team of, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, right? So if it's a church, every church in Oklahoma needs an abolitionist lobbying team.
Yeah.
Every single church, right?
Oh, we'd see change really
Oh
quick.
my gosh, so fast. So you build that little team. Well, now that little team, once you've kind of identified who the team is, now we're going to want to meet up again. Okay, so give it a couple weeks or whatever, and then let's set up another time. Let's go have dinner or whatever. I will work around your schedule. I'll come talk to your team, give you more information about what all you need to do to build a relationship. And all this is just kind of from my experience in the state Senate. And then, like I said, if you want me to go to the meeting with you, I'll go. We may get shot, so it may be better. It may be better if you guys just go, right?
Yeah.
But I will. I'll go with you. Or if you feel pretty confident, and I've told you kind of what it's going to look like, then you guys can go. So that's so yeah, it's real simple. I mean, just reach out to us and we'll be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Well, it's encouraging because I think as abolition gets bigger, more popular, you're going to have more legislators coming up with different ways of sort of looking for ways to continue to social climb and protect their careers and stuff.
Yep.
And appear to be abolitionist.
Yeah. No, they will.
And I think you're going to be training people to not let them get away with that.
Right. That's exactly right. And the whole thing is, I mean, with a normal legislator, what they don't like is educated, involved constituents on any matter.
Which
right?
sounds so bad.
It does, but they like to go to the Capitol, do their thing, come back, and tell all their voters how amazing they were. Okay, so and it's not just abolition. It's public education, right? They don't like when teachers come talk to them. Okay, because they're involved and they kind of know what's going on with whatever standardized testing or budget or anything like that. Same thing needs to happen with abolition. So like we need to continue to have the Abolition Day rallies, absolutely, right? But we also need to, throughout the year, these legislators know that from, I don't know, First Baptist Church, wherever, there's like 8 guys that want to talk multiple times a year and know, what are you doing to end abortion? Because the answer is nothing, right? So that's what we're trying to get those people educated and hooked up, because there's so many people in every single church. There's passionate people. They just don't know what to do. You know what I mean? And they may be even like, because of some of y'all's material, right? They may have a really good understanding of abolition and why pro-life bills are bad, but what they're a little bit uncomfortable is like, I don't really know how to talk to my legislator. Because I've heard people say like, well, anytime I bring it up, they kind of start talking all this legal jargon.
Yeah.
And I don't really know what to say. And I'm just like, great, I'll tell you exactly what to say.
Yeah, we get lots of messages every February and March. We're getting messages from lots of people saying, hey, my senator or rep said this. Is this true? Or how do I respond to this? Or all this sort of stuff. So it's a very important thing.
Yeah. And so imagine y'all's abolition day, right? So let's fast forward like a year or two, right? So say Liberty Rising's effective in going to every Senate district in Oklahoma and getting like 3 churches to form a team of like, I don't know, 5 to 10 people, right? So I say 10 people. Mm-hmm. We have the abolition rally, right? And then in every single senator's office, there's like a line of 10 people.
Yeah.
And they're actually voters. Mm-hmm. They're not going to like that at all. They're not, but that's the goal.
And they'll start to change.
They will.
I think that there is something, and I've heard them say stuff. I can't remember who it was, but someone was telling me, it's like, well, I kind of thought you guys were going to go away.
Yeah.
Like I didn't feel like it was that pressing of an issue, because it didn't seem like something that you'd be able to sustain for half a decade.
Right.
But then if it keeps on growing, like the number of abolitionists, population-wise, but groups and campaigns and days, it's like, yeah, we all like Abolition Day. It's a day to like sort of put on display the number, but you have to have this sustained, constant flow of communication.
Right.
And not only do they need to know your name, but at this point in time, I'd say at some point in time, they're going to like, I like you.
Right.
But right now, if they know your name and they like you and they're not passing a bill of abolition,
right,
you're probably doing it wrong.
That's exactly right.
I actually know a good point on the liking you. There's some guys out in Western Oklahoma, probably the nicest, just the nicest guys in the world. The least like they're not mean in any sense. I couldn't even picture them raising their voice. I don't even know what that would look like.
These people are nicer than me, and I'm super nice.
Yeah, just the nicest guys in the world, really passionate about the cause, and they go meet with their state rep and just get treated like dirt. Yeah. And they're the nicest guys in the world. They got young families, and they just get treated like absolute dirt.
Yep.
And so it's a lot of time. That's not to say it's not an excuse to be a jerk, but even if you are very nice, expect in a lot of cases to be treated very, very poorly.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I mean, and the whole thing with Liberty Rising is I want people, because that's discouraging, right? Yeah. And that's been part of my thing is how do I keep people from getting discouraged? And I think one of the ways to do that is to know that they are talking to the person that they voted for, and they know that person knows very well that they're going to go tell their circle of influence about them. So even though that those meetings don't go super well and they're not like all fluffy, right? They got to come away with knowing you made an impact, or that legislator wouldn't be acting that way, right? Mm-hmm. And that goes back to that whole flattery and friend thing. If they're super like, oh yeah, you guys are great, well, that's not good. So and that's what I want to help with. That's what I want to. Right. Yeah, it's going to be a bad meeting. It's going to be kind of controversial, probably tense and stuff like that. But you, by doing that multiple times throughout the year, is making a huge impact to actually the end game of finally abolishing abortion. Right. And when I tell people, and the other thing I want to note is when I talk about Liberty Rising and how to be effective, like your church or a team from your church, or as an individual or a family or whatever, how to be effective when it comes to lobbying your legislator. Some people are like, man, I've got work. I don't got time for that. And here's what I say. So from spending six years in the state Senate, if you will dedicate like 15 minutes a week and maybe a couple hours a month, you're going to make a massive impact on your state legislator.
So
literally. And people are like, really? And I'm just like, yes, because most constituents hardly ever talk to their legislator. And if they do, it's about like, hey, I need help with my Social Security check or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. Which is good. But if you're willing to dedicate like 15 minutes a week and a couple hours a month, right? So phone call, email, stuff like that, and then a couple hours a month to set up a meeting. And it doesn't like if you live in the Panhandle, you don't have to go to the Capitol to meet with them. I can tell you that you can set up a meeting when they come back to the district, right?
So when you're back, I'd like to buy you coffee and talk about abolition.
When you come back, can I take you out to coffee? Me and a couple buddies from my church want to talk to you about some stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're going to go through all of that as you start to get to know Liberty Rising. And we got a great board. So our board, I think you've had all of the board members on the podcast, right? So Chris Gore, pastor at he's my pastor at FBC Beggs, Kelly Green, and then Brett Baggett. That's the founding board of Liberty Rising, and those guys are going to help as well. So some boards are like, whatever, just do whatever. Well, I asked them, I was like, listen, how involved do you guys want to be? They're like, we want to like go places and do things with this group. So it's not just like, oh, I'm going to come bore you, right? You're going to get these other guys also to kind of basically walk alongside you.
Yeah, and it's a cool thing. Like the guys you mentioned, I mean, we were just at a Free Will Baptist conference, and you were there, we were there, the Free Will guys there, and then Callie from Texas was there, and it's kind of, you're looking at this, you're like, man, this is some pretty sweet unity, and everybody's sort of like helping each other, and we're all playing our different roles and being consistent with them, and there's a lot that God's doing. Yeah. And one of the things I think that we can be most thankful for is that we're all working together. And I loved seeing Chris Gore there. Yeah. I mean, I almost want to be like, hey, Chris Gore, so let's talk about free will.
Let's talk about it.
Let's get into it. And I didn't make the joke. I was in a very serious place for my talk, but I wanted to get up and be like, all right, so.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Reformed Baptist, Free Will Baptist, being brought together by loving God and loving your neighbor.
Right, and that beautiful thing. Going full circle to kind of what, because see, the legislature watches, especially Senate leadership and the Senate security team, which I've got a lot of friends there. Right, they watch the abolition chatter. Okay, because they talk to me about it, right? Yeah, and they
watch Russell's live stream while he's in the Capitol.
Exactly.
So they come talk to him about it.
I'm like live streaming, and some guy with an AR-15 walks up next to me, and I'm like,
so they kind of want to know
security,
what's going on.
Not one of us.
And they're watching
an actual guy is allowed to carry an AR-15 in the Capitol. But I was like, this is lame, y'all.
It's true. And when it goes back to that unity, when they see guys like Blake Gideon getting on board, and then the Free Will Baptist hosting conferences where, Baptists are coming to, and then Free the States, and then here comes Liberty Rising right alongside Free the States. That's not good for them, and they're like, this whole unity stuff's not working.
They're like, man, our slander did not succeed.
Our slander and gossip trying to split this little movement up is not working out.
Because right now the unity among abolitionist pastors is more united than even the SBC is on stuff. Like the SBC fights way more than the abolitionist pastors. We don't. Yeah. We don't fight. Yeah. So I think that's very scary.
That's very
something
true.
that can unite so many denominations here.
Very true.
And they want to obscure it. I don't know him as well. I know Blake Gideon pretty well, but Mike Wade, you've got like the head of the Free Will Baptist up there saying, I'm an abolitionist, I'm not a pro-lifer, and it was just really amazing. And I think they're trying to keep these things secret. Like one of the things they like to do, and I know they do it to us, and we don't so much care, the whole like slander bit, and I'm sure they'll do it to you. Yeah. Liberty Rising, that's Joseph Silk, and he eats babies or whatever they're going to say about you. But it's not succeeding, and I think that's beginning to scare them. So, but we need to be on guard for what they're going to do to combat it.
Right.
And I always fear sort of like the creation of sort of a fake abolition coalition or like there's an abolitionist lobby.
Right.
And they know that they can do all these things, like the tricks that they pull.
Right.
They don't call up Free the States, be like, hey, I'm going to put forward this other bill. Can I get you behind it? Because they know that we're like, now we see through your hypocrisy.
No, whatever. And you're exactly right. What they'll do, like on that note, so they're acknowledging, and I'm talking about the Senate, right? And they're acknowledging, okay, this abolition movement is becoming a much larger threat to our little kingdom, our little political castle. Yeah. And so you're exactly right. So what they're going to start doing is like, okay, well, let's kind of get with a quasi-abolitionist group and get their blessing on our pro-life bills.
Yeah,
right.
Scary.
So then what happens is then they're like, okay, yeah, look, this bill ends abortion, right? And then it's going to be harder for us, right, to be like, no, listen, everybody, all these people who've been actively lobbying their legislature, that's not a good bill. But they will do that. So they're going to come up with these tactics.
Right.
And a lot of those tactics are going to be kind of accepting the abolition movement, right? And they're going to be like, yeah, come alongside us.
It's exactly what we're seeing in Texas. The Texas Right to Life has named their bill the Texas Abolition, or they've named their strategy the Texas Abolition Strategy, because they're trying to kind of steer all the abolitionist momentum that Texas abolitionists have built in this other incremental direction. So they're actually stealing the language.
Yeah.
And so you got to be on guard for things like that coming from the Senate
well,
leadership here in
and
Oklahoma.
a good example of that is like Republicans, for example. So for the long time, like is the Republicans or the Democrats controlled the Oklahoma legislature. Then these grassroots Republicans took over, like in the age of, and a lot of people don't like him, and he, Randy Brogdon, right? In the age of the Randy Brogdon, when he was in the Senate, it was a very conservative state Senate. Well, then what happened? Then all these people who were Democrats, they're like, well, we can't get elected as Democrats anymore, so let's just run as Republicans. But their ideology was the same, and they came up there and they pushed these progressive ideas as Republicans, as a Republican controlled the Senate and House, right? And so that's the kind of it's already happened politically there, and it'll happen politically again with abolition and pro-life stuff like that.
Well, what's even more difficult about that is you mentioned quasi-abolitionist organizations who they try to just get the approval from. What's more difficult, I think, a lot of the times is there's a lot of organizations who we're friends with who are coming along too, who just haven't adopted all of the ideas of like calling yourself an abolitionist. And there's some people out there who are sort of advocating for abolition bills, but they're trying to do it under the guise of let's just smuggle this in under the pro-life label type thing.
Right.
And, for us, it's like we're putting our ideas out there. We're trying to educate them and get them to come along and see why this is the better way to go about it. Make this thing, like draw the line.
Right.
Make sure people are seeing that this is exactly what the ideas are, and we're separate from the pro-life movement. We're not in that camp. So like part of it is like it becomes even more difficult when it's those types of people because we're trying to we do have a good relationship with them.
Right. Well, and the problem is, is if you think that abolitionists have a negative connotation, but to abandon things like, well, I believe in that, life begins at fertilization, and if we intentionally take it, it's murder, but I don't really want to label myself as an abolitionist. I'm like, well, why not?
Yeah.
Right. And so you kind of have to own it.
The abolitionists have the reputation they have because we were asking for things that were worth slandering.
Correct.
There's a lot of effort that has gone into making us seem bad. Like there's a reason that label carries so much baggage, just because they hate us, because they hate our ideas. And so identify with us and you will get hated too.
Well, and I have heard people tell legislators, don't affiliate with like Free the States, or don't affiliate with Joseph Silk, or don't affiliate with the abolition movement, like if it says it's an abolition movement. And if that's the case, I would never listen to that person again.
Yeah, that person's exposing
That's
themselves.
crazy.
Yeah.
If the people who are keeping child sacrifice legal have a problem with you, you're doing it right.
Correct.
If they prefer you and they like you, you are being a problem.
Right.
Because you are allowing them to feel like they're not wrong.
Exactly.
And you're giving them a space to, it's like creating a way for people to be abolitionists without being abolitionists. And I don't care what you're calling it or the bill or your group or whatever. If it is truly abolitionist and you stick to that, they're going to dislike you too.
Right.
You can't get around it.
Right. Well, and some people, and you probably could expound on this being a history buff, right? But groups like Free the States as an abolition group, and a guy like me as one of the first guys to actually run an abolition bill called the legislature out, somebody had to be the wrecking ball to bust down the dam, right? We just had to be. That's not a bad thing. Now, are we always going to own that? Yes. And is there always going to be people that have a bad attitude towards us because we did that? Yes. But that's not a bad thing, but we need to stay the course, right? Even though there's some people that think negatively of us because we hurt their feelings.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first met James, and James was coming on board abolitionism and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how you said it, so I don't want to quote you wrong, but it's kind of like, I'm gonna be nicer, or I'm gonna, like I'll be.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the nice abolitionist.
I'll be the nice, and everyone does that, and I'm just kind of like, the deal is it's an actual lie. It's just a myth. That the reason that people don't abolish abortion is because the advocates of abolition are ill-tempered or something.
And
Because I'm sitting around like, I'm not actually ill-tempered. It's just very convenient to call me that so you can justify not doing your job.
Right.
And anyone looks ill-tempered when they talk about abortion as it really is nowadays. Because it's like people don't think of it in the terms of genocide. Like, how do you treat genocide? How do you treat the legalized killing of your preborn neighbors?
Correct.
They're thinking it's just another political issue. We shouldn't be one issue voters, that type of thing.
Right.
That's the sort of environment we're living in now, and no one actually thinks consistently about what abortion is.
And I've talked to people about this an example that I give that may not be super popular, but I love it, right? Is so we look at Hitler, like
Great. Now YouTube's going to censor our program.
So
you can't say anything and learn anything about let's not be like Hitler because they'll think
look
you're for
at
it.
Hitler, right? Were we flattering Hitler? And were we trying to befriend Hitler, right?
Some people were. Chamberlain.
Yeah, all sorts of people were. That's how he got away with it.
Right. And it went on for a while, right? But but look at what he did. 11 million Jews or something died because of him, right? Well, due to our state legislature and in our federal government, what are we going on? 63, 64 million people dying, right?
Just
Probably
counted.
a lot
And the
more,
question
yeah.
that I always pose is, and we could have a whole episode on this, but if you are a sitting state senator or state representative and you're using your position of authority to keep abortion legal, what's the difference between you and Hitler?
Yeah, it's a great analogy because
Are you going to edit that out? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, that stays.
We don't edit things out, man.
yeah, like if you look at the Nuremberg trials, you had a bunch of Nazis on trial before an international court saying, I was just following orders. I'm just doing what I said to do. And what do the senators and reps say? They say, well, I'm just following the Supreme Court's orders. They told me I had to allow child sacrifice, so we allowed child sacrifice. I'm just following orders. It's the same.
And then when you come around and you do exactly what y'all are doing right now, they go, I don't want to go down in history as someone who was like Hitler or like someone at the Nuremberg trials. And that's why they dislike us. They don't dislike us because we're telling lies. They dislike us because we're telling the truth.
Right.
And there's no way to debate the truth when it's so true. So ad hominem arguments.
Or mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
I don't expect people to be attacking Liberty Rising and what you're doing on account of like it's not actually Christian or Republican or good government because of this. It's going to be when Joseph Silk was in office, he was friends with some people who ran a billboard of Jason Smalley, and that's just uncalled for.
That should be bad.
Yeah.
No.
Well, what you said about being the wrecking ball too, I think is a really important point because if we look at the abolition of slavery or the abolition of any great evil, I had someone just the other day. They're like, "Oh, slavery was around for 200 years, and you're criticizing the pro-life movement for not getting rid of abortion in 50 years." And it's like, well, if you realize that the abolition movement came on the scene, and then a few decades after that, it was gone, and the main opposition was the incrementalists or the gradualists. Yep. That's what we're dealing with now. Like, you come in, you're the wrecking ball, you're sort of getting things ready for abolition to come on the scene, and the main opposition is not the pro-choicers, it's the pro-lifers who are opposing you.
Well, and what's even kind of a unique situation when it comes to state legislators and abolition, where it's not the same with for Hitler, for example. There's a really good analogy there, but the big difference is every state legislator has the authority to do something about abolition. And so they have nothing to hide behind. So going back to how when you were saying about they don't like what we're saying, what makes that worse is because there's nothing that they can say. If they haven't authored a bill to end abortion or abolish abortion, they have no excuse. They can't just be like, because every state senator, every state representative has the authority to author bills.
That's such a good point.
Use their
right,
use
and that's
their
what they
office.
hate about abolition is because, like, as Liberty Rising, as we progress, I'm going to tell people, go talk to your senator about this, and they're going to be like, yeah, I'll vote for it. No, we want you to author the bill or co-author the bill, and that's going to make them so mad. So a good example of that is Senate Bill 13. So Senator Rob Standridge from here in Norman, again, a good buddy of mine, right? He came to me on the Senate floor, and he's like, hey, can we talk in your office after session? And I'm just like, oh, boy, here we go, right? And so he comes in, and he brings some backup, like Nathan Dom and somebody else, right? And so they come in. He's like, listen, there's some like homeschool moms in my district that are trashing me because I'm not getting behind Senate Bill 13. They've got my wife all upset. You going to run some cover for me? I'm just like, well, just co-author the bill. I was like,
your cover.
I told him that. I was like, just co-author the bill. And he was like, are you really not going to call them off on this? And I'm like, first off, I don't even know who they are, but just co-author the bill. And that's all they want. And he never did. But he was so mad because a thing like abolition, every single legislator can do something. They have nothing to hide behind.
Yeah.
And that's why they're so touchy. They're like hypersensitive when they're approached.
I mean,
about
it's
it.
crazy. And in a certain sense, I understand why they hate us.
Yeah.
I get it because, yes, I mean, Rob Sanders is probably a good guy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Greg Treat. Like, for instance, Greg Treat doesn't know. He doesn't like when I draw him.
Right.
But I literally have a drawing of Greg Treat on a horse with a spear slaying the dragon of abortion.
See, that's awesome.
In the instance that he does it.
Right.
I don't have to draw it. I can just put it up.
Right.
It's and I think that they look at it and they go, you know what? Whenever I'm old and I'm dying and my kids are reading books, I'm going to be in books as a principal figure, at least in the state of Oklahoma, against the abolitionist. And they're like, and that's so mean of them. I'm like, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
Like, it doesn't have to be that way. You could be the hero.
Right.
And at some point in time, even maybe for selfish reasons, some of them are going to flip.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now, yeah, your legacy,
And
like
I
Rob
think-
Standridge, I do not like. He's your friend. I'm not going to be unnecessarily mean because I think I could be a good friend and help to Rob Standridge. It's what he's choosing to do or not do.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And that we're willing to say, you could do this and you don't do this. And then when he straight up bald-faced lies to constituents who come into his office and he says, I can't do it because of this.
Yeah.
And he comes up and then the constituents email us and we're like, no, he's saying that, but he could easily co-author it.
Right.
He could, there's no, like, he's lying to you. And then, get him contradicting himself,
Right.
pointing it out. He's mad at us for pointing out his hypocrisy, inconsistency, or contradictory statements. But those are his statements.
Right. No, that's exactly right.
And that's why he's mad.
Well, and it is, again, going back to that high percent. Like, for instance, I do think we're going to be the generation to abolish abortion. I think my kids are going to see that, right? And so people like Jason Smalley will be alive when there's books written about it.
Oh, yeah.
And so Jason Smalley's grandkids are going to read a history book that he was he was the chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee, and he would not hear that bill. That adds to that hypersensitivity. But I always go back to this too. Everybody in the state of Oklahoma is probably, in this age group is going to see that. So I sometimes, when I'm talking, I'm like, what are you going to say to your grandkids that your role was in abolishing abortion? Because a lot of people, even like some of my family members, are going to be like, well, nothing, we didn't think it could be done. And I'm like, that's really sad. And that goes back to Liberty Rising. Like, I want to help you be somebody that, 50 years from now can tell your grandkids, yes, I was at the Capitol 3 times a year. I'd go have coffee with my senator. I built a relationship with him. He was one of the votes that voted to end abortion, right? You can be that guy. Everybody in the state of Oklahoma can be that constituent. Or you can be the constituent that tells your grandkids, well, I was too busy working.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Who wants to do that, right?
We know that there will be a lot of them saying, oh, yeah, I was totally down for it. I mean,
Oh yeah, I was for that, But
yeah. And now, and then the better history books will correct that, but people won't know it,
Yeah. One of the best or the most regurgitated pro-life myths is that Wilberforce is one of the incrementalists. And actually, I wrote an article, the most recent article on our blog, touching on how if you read Wilberforce, if you read Thomas Clarkson, the ones that they villainize as the people who delayed abolition were the gradualists, were the Henry Dundases. If you watch Amazing Grace, the villain is the guy who stands up and says, I agree with Wilberforce, but it must be done gradually. That's the villain, and that is the Greg Treat, the Greg McCourtneys, all
There's
these guys.
going to be a casting call, and they're going to be like having people come in to play the role of Greg Treat or Jason Smaller or Jeff Leach or something like that. And it's going to say something like, this person needs to like have the appearance of being a good guy, but then be kind of evil. And they're going to have to pull off this sort of role. And whenever people come in to play that role, they're going to choose them on whether they can pull this off.
Right.
And it's not because we've said they're evil. It's because they've done evil things. And history records that. I just think that they're hedging their bets at the moment and thinking, nah, that's not how it's going to be.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I mean, that's how it's going to be.
That is how it's, I mean, just look at history. That's how it's going to be. Like, you're not slowing the abolition movement down. Like, everything that could possibly have been done to slow it down has been done, and it's actually sped it up. Like, when you look politically speaking, right, over where the abolition movement has gone in the past 5 years, you're like, oh my gosh, like probably really soon it's just going to explode.
Yeah. We're mounting towards a tipping point.
Yeah,
and inevitability.
And whenever we hit that, it's going to go crazy. Not just in Oklahoma, but all over the nation. But they're kind of just standing back, like, I hope that doesn't happen. But it's gonna happen.
Yeah. And it's not just Oklahoma. Yeah, that it affects. It's like when they kill a bill here, we get people, abolitionists all over the country that are like, oh wow, I just found out about you guys because of this happening in Oklahoma. I started watching your podcast, and now I'm a full abolitionist.
Yeah, so it's a great point. The more they do that, the harder they struggle against it. Really, the more it helps the movement.
Yeah,
because it was like all the pastors, like a lot of the guys on your board, and like Gideon and all these guys, they came on board from seeing the Gideon and all the SBC guys oppose SB 13, and they did that because we put Jason Smalley on a billboard. Jason Smalley goes to the SBC, says, "Hey, can you give me some cover?" And that's what angers all these pastors so badly that they become abolitionists.
Right. Yeah.
And so the more they struggle, the more we grow.
And now Gideon is on our side, but
right.
Well, and I think
stop struggling, guys. Stop struggling.
And what's going to happen, like with Liberty Rising, what I think is going to happen is some people are going to be like, okay, I listened to your deal. I'm going to go talk to my legislator. And in the back of their mind, they're like, no, I know he's going to be for it. They're going to go to that meeting. It's not going to go good. They're going to be like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to bring 10 guys from my church back because I can't believe that we voted for somebody who is refusing to get behind a bill that would abolish abortion. So I think that that pushback, right, is really what's spurring it forward.
And how like that's the last thing they want is a couple passionate people in their district who are really looking forward to replacing them.
And that's what it's going to come down to is you're going to build a relationship with them and press them to get behind an abolition bill, author it, co-author it, whatever it needs to be. But then if you don't, all right, then we're just going to replace you. And it's no different than any other political thing. Like if you're live in rural Oklahoma and you're anti-Second Amendment, you're not going to get reelected if you voted against the Second Amendment bill. Well, if you live in rural Oklahoma and we already saw this, you alluded to Boggs, so Senator Boggs, who was a good buddy of mine, really good guy. He was just on the wrong side. That's all there is to it.
Well, and he probably believed leadership.
Yeah. Oh, 8-year incumbent senator got beat. And the primary issue was abolition. He would not get behind it. And so then you got Warren Hamilton who comes in, and incumbents don't get beat. And I would say, actually I know for a fact, that Senator Shaw, another 8-year incumbent who got beat, right, by not as hardcore of an abolitionist, but somebody who said, yes, I will support it if it comes up. I don't really know a whole lot about him, but I do know because I know people that lived in that district. They did not vote for Wayne Shaw. We're talking probably in the hundreds because he wouldn't back abolition. And so take that, fast forward 8 years, it's going to be a whole different landscape. It's crazy.
And we could go through them. I mean, Paul Scott's not in there.
Paul Scott, same thing. So Paul Scott, there's three. He was in it. So 3 incumbents in the Senate that didn't get elected. And even though they may not have been replaced by abolitionists, they lost because they refused, because they lost votes, right? People would be like, well, I didn't vote for them again.
Yeah.
And that's just really unheard of.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate having you on here. We're looking forward to the work of Liberty Rising. I think it's going to be really good.
We'll definitely be promoting it. So getting the material out.
Tell people, call me. We'll set it up. Again, date, time will be there. There's really no reason to wait.
If you don't invite him to your church to train your people, he's going to go sit in a deer blind.
That's right. So it's your choice. Either I go sit in a deer blind, or I come talk about abolition.
That would be a waste.
Keep Joseph out of the deer blinds. Protect Oklahoma deer.
There you go.
So one more note: we didn't make this in the beginning. Please subscribe to our channel. Like our page, share this podcast. We want to get more people hearing this stuff because a lot of people just are not aware. And they don't believe that when we say the pro-lifers are the main ones keeping abortion legal, They don't believe that a lot of the times until they hear from people like Joseph who have seen it firsthand. So, get people to listen to this podcast. It's really important that they understand that, and that's essential to ending abortion. So,
And you can go to freethestates.org to check out our new store. By the way, we've got pamphlets, we got drop cards, T-shirts, whole bunch of stuff, and stickers. So go pick up some stuff. And if you are a donor to Free the States of at least $25 a month or more, you get a discount of 15% to the entire store. So go to freethestates.org /donate to do that. Joseph, are you taking donations yet at your website?
Yeah, we're not online. So we are just in the beginning phases. But I would say people go ahead and go to liberty-rising.org, fill out the contact form, and then as we progress, as we get stuff going, we'll be sending out emails.
Yeah,
awesome.
But just really important, begin talking. So if you're a pastor, talk to yourself and your fellow elders or whatever. Talk to your pastors, your Sunday school groups, just whoever. Begin thinking, okay, I'm going to set up a time, a place. I'm going to contact Liberty Rising and try to get this going. Because the sessions basically, there's not abolition for this session. They successfully killed that very quickly. Still be having conversations with your legislators and let them know that you weren't fooled by all these different namby-pamby pro-life bills that they're passing and all that kind of stuff. But there's a constancy to this, and there's a not sort of falling off during sort of the off periods. Now is the time to be getting groups, going through pamphlets, setting up times to have people who are willing to drive all over Oklahoma, maybe even out of the state.
Yeah.
Just to come talk and train up people, because this is what we need to be doing. Yep. And I think we are 100% behind you.
Awesome.
And we'll be 100% promoting you as you move on. So again, Liberty Rising. Is it Liberty-Rising?
It's liberty-rising.org. Yeah.
.org. And so visit the site today, and then you got a Facebook page as well.
Yeah. So Liberty Rising Institute on Facebook. So
okay. So we'll make sure that's all there. And so awesome to have you on here.
Always good talking.
We're going to have to have you on as a regular guest.
Yeah,
now
do it.
Now that we've had episode 35.
That's right.
You owe us like 2 or 3 episodes.
That's right.
So we'll watch your beard as it grows and grows and grows.
It stays trimmed though. That's the problem. It's just going to stay. I know. That's quasi-abolitionist.
No, me too. Mine never really gets any longer.
Well, some have said that you can measure how long someone's been an abolitionist by how long their beard is. It's not true, but I like the thought. Yeah,
that would have been a fun thing to do at the beginning.
Yeah,
my beard would be at my knees then, and that'd be kind of gross.
It would. I don't know. It's pretty cool.
I'm braiding it up.
There you go.
That'd be pretty epic.
You can braid an AHA and do it.
A Gimli beard. But anyway, thanks everybody for watching this and subscribing and sharing it. And who we have on? We got
Blake Gideon.
Blake Gideon next week.
Man, we got to get Blake Gideon in on here.
That is going to be a fun episode.
That will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could be.
It'll be awesome.
Thank you this was a great episode. Thank you for watching it, and look back on Thursday for the next episode.